had been working security for almost 7 years by the time this happened, long enough to understand which contracts were easy money and which ones slowly wore you down. This one belonged to the second category. It was a municipal data storage facility built far outside the city limits, isolated by design and surrounded by nothing but trees, open fields, and darkness once the sun went down. There were no houses nearby, no streetlights, and no businesses for miles. Just one narrow access road leading to a gated parking lot and a squat concrete building sitting in the middle of it all. 4 floors, narrow windows, reinforced doors, and a fence tall enough to make escape difficult. At least that was the idea. Normally, 2 guards were assigned to overnight shifts. Staffing shortages changed that quickly. By the time my incident occurred, I was alone most weekends. My shift started at 11 p.m., and within an hour, thick storm clouds rolled in, swallowing the moon and turning the entire property into a black silhouette. The first few hours were uneventful. I completed patrols, logged routine checks, and watched the camera feeds cycle through empty hallways and silent corridors. That kind of quiet should have been comforting. Instead, it pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating, like the building itself was holding its breath. Around 2:30 a.m., an alert chimed from the control panel. One of the exterior motion sensors along the rear fence line had tripped. That zone almost never activated. Wind and rain usually hit the open lot, not the wooded perimeter. I pulled the camera feed up, expecting nothing more than swaying branches or rain distortion. The image was grainy and streaked with water, but something stood just beyond the reach of the floodlights. A tall shape, motionless, facing the building. It didn't wave, it didn't move. It simply stood there. I leaned closer to the monitor, my eyes straining. The figure remained perfectly still, as if it knew it was being watched. I radioed dispatch to log the alert and grabbed my flashlight, telling myself I was being paranoid. Fatigue does strange things to perception, especially at that hour. As I moved through the building toward the rear stairwell, every sound felt amplified. My boots echoed too loudly. The hum of the lights felt intrusive. When I reached the rear exit, I stopped cold. The access panel glowed green. That door was never unlocked overnight unless manually overridden. I checked the access log. It showed the door had been opened and closed less than a minute earlier. No ID attached. No explanation. I didn't open it. Something told me not to. Instead, I backed away and returned to the control room, pulling up every exterior camera at once. That's when I noticed something worse. One of the rear fence cameras was completely offline. No static, no image, just black. The radio crackled as dispatch tried to respond, but the signal broke apart and died. My phone showed no service. The storm had swallowed everything. Another alert chimed. This one came from inside the building. 3rd floor. West corridor. I locked the control room door and shut off the lights, crouching behind the desk as quietly as possible. My heartbeat felt loud enough to give me away. Somewhere below, faint footsteps echoed through the ventilation system. Slow, measured, purposeful. They weren't running. The footsteps stopped directly beneath me. Metal scraped against metal. A door maybe, then nothing. Minutes passed. My legs cramped. My mouth went dry. I didn't move until headlights finally cut through the rain outside. Backup patrol had arrived. I didn't leave the room until I heard voices and keys at the door. Together we searched the entire building, every room, every stairwell. Nothing was damaged. Nothing was missing. When we walked the perimeter, one of the officers pushed through thick brush behind the building and froze. Hidden behind overgrown weeds was an old service gate. Rusted hinges. No alarm sensor. According to records, it hadn't been used in years. It stood wide open. I always preferred working the cameras instead of patrols. Sitting in a control room felt safer than walking empty hallways at night. That belief lasted until my 3rd month guarding a private research complex just outside the city. After that, cameras never felt passive again. The site was clean, quiet, and professionally maintained. Underground parking garage, multiple office floors, controlled access points. Nothing about it suggested danger. My overnight shift started at midnight, and for the first hour, everything looked exactly the same as it always did. Empty garage, silent halls. Just after 1 a.m., I noticed movement on one of the garage feeds. The camera panned slightly to the left. That shouldn't have been possible. The cameras were fixed position, no motors, no remote controls. I watched closely, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. The lens adjusted again, slowly centering on a dark gap between 2 concrete pillars. Nothing stood there. No car, no shadow, just empty space. I switched to a second camera. It shifted too. My stomach tightened as the 3rd feed followed. All 3 lenses now focused on the same spot. I radioed dispatch, reporting a possible system malfunction. They told me to log it and reset if needed. Before I could, a shadow moved across the floor. It wasn't a reflection or headlight glare. It had weight and shape. It slid between the pillars and disappeared behind a parked company vehicle. I waited. It didn't come back. Against my better judgment, I took the elevator down to the garage. The ride felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, the space was silent and empty. My flashlight beam swept across concrete tires and license plates. Nothing. I returned upstairs uneasy. When I checked the monitors again, my breath caught. The cameras had shifted, now tracking the exact path I had just walked moments earlier. I shut off the screens. That's when the radio crackled to life on my desk. At first it was static, then something else bled through beneath it, breathing, slow, controlled. It wasn't coming from the speaker, it echoed faintly through the room itself. Footsteps sounded below, heavy and wet. The elevator call button lit up on my panel. Someone had pressed it from the garage. I backed toward the exit, locking the control room behind me and taking the stairs instead. I didn't stop until I reached the lobby, where headlights appeared through the glass doors. An early delivery truck had arrived. I waited with the driver until police responded. They searched the garage and found no one. No damage. No intruder. No system errors. But when they reviewed the footage, one detail stood out. Every camera adjustment occurred seconds before I moved, as if something already knew where I was going. My first night training as a mobile security guard was supposed to be uneventful. Ride along, learn procedures, observe. The site was a decommissioned government annex, still under contract but completely vacant. No staff, no activity, just us and a silent building. We arrived shortly after midnight. The front doors were locked, but the side entrance stood slightly open. No alarms had been triggered. No calls from dispatch. That alone was enough to make my supervisor tense. Inside, the building smelled old, like dust and stagnant air. Emergency lights cast red shadows along the walls. We cleared the first floor quickly. Nothing seemed disturbed. Then the lights dimmed. Not fully out. Just enough that everything shifted into a dull emergency glow. A low hum vibrated through the walls as backup power engaged. That's when we heard movement above us. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. We took the stairs carefully, stopping between floors to listen. Whoever was up there wasn't rushing. They weren't hiding in panic. They were waiting. On the third floor, a door at the end of the hall swung gently, as if it had just been opened. My supervisor raised his baton and told me to stay close. The room beyond was empty. The footsteps started again. Behind us, we ran. The stairwell echoed with heavy movement, far too close. My supervisor radioed for backup as we locked ourselves in an office. Something hit the door once, then again. The handle twisted slowly. We stayed silent until the pressure stopped. Backup arrived 15 minutes later. They found muddy footprints in the stairwell, bare feet. They stopped just outside the office door.